Hi, this is Natalie Lander, voice of Kinsey, Tara Branford, Stargirl, and many others. You are listening to a W2Mnet podcast. You can visit W2Mnet.com for other podcasts about entertainment, video games, sports, and wrestling.
Welcome, one and all, to what I'm sure after recent events this past week is a very much welcome and needed distraction that is soccer to the max. Yes, I understand the current events. Yes, we will be discussing them in some form or fashion. And for those of you who also faithfully listen to the kickoff, if you don't, then you should. We're recording an episode later on that should be up within the next couple of days, where we will talk about everything else in depth. But that is a different show for a completely different podcast. And just to help keep me in line, I am not here by myself. I am here with the, as always, very productive, very good at adulting in these times, Rachael Krieger.
Very good at adulting is very up for grabs. This has been a very, very trying week for me. I think, I didn't mention this to you and Sean yet, and it's because everything has been crazy. Of course, Sean is our fearless producer and friend, but I lost my job last week. Really, really hit, really stung. Went and cleaned out everything in my office area yesterday, and it was just so emotional. But I do have to say that I love my teammates and my friends, and I'm really grateful and so just beyond blessed to have spent 18, 19 months at an incredible organization like Dick's Sporting Goods. I learned so much. I never thought that, with a journalism degree, going into grad school for media communication, I would go into marketing. I despise the idea of selling stuff to people, but I really, really enjoyed the work that I did there. I'm going to miss the people, of course, more than the work, but excited that I got that experience. And now I'm just back in and looking again and just kind of hoping and praying and seeing what happens. And obviously, there are so many worse situations than losing your job. I do not understand. I will never understand what it is like to be a Black person in America. But I will say that while I don't understand, please understand that I am with you. I will fight for you. And I am always on your side because Black lives do matter. And I just wanted to put that out there. I know you guys are going to go more into it on the kickoff, but I wanted to put that out there, make my sentiments known, and let everyone know, whether it be in Minnesota, whether it be here in Pittsburgh, down in Jacksonville, or anywhere throughout the world. I am with you. You have an ally in me, and I will not stop posting things on social media, helping to informing myself, because education is one of the greatest tools in the world. But I am here as an ally, as a friend, and as someone you can put your head on my shoulder. So I just wanted to put that out there.
Well, that's much appreciated, because right now we are very proud to have allies across the spectrum, no matter what color, because things aren't going to change by themselves. Unfortunately, that's been shown. But the more people that we can get together and change things, the better. Borderline by any means necessary, but that's a whole too complicated thing, especially the way that I have been feeling lately. I will say that. And by the way, when you lost your job, did the first two things you do were involving going to Applebee's and then going to a friend's house to smoke?
And they were not. I cried. I did a lot of crying. I was just, I was talking to my manager and, God love her. My manager's out on maternity leave and she was checking in on every one of us. So she's amazing. But I got ice cream though. I did guzzle down some ice cream. I drank a few of those red, white, and berry drinks, which are so addictingly good because you don't taste the alcohol. And I'm one of those people that I think I've told you and Sean this before, not to get into, something too off topic, but I don't like alcohol. I don't like the taste of alcohol. I'm not really a drinker. I'm always the first to offer to be the designated driver when I'm going out with my friends, even if it's like my birthday or something. So, like, those drinks, they don't taste like pop. They taste like kind of like sparkled juice or whatever, and they're so good.
I've had those before. They're delicious. And yes, you're still better at adulting than me because when I was in that situation last year, and so yeah, not to go into it too much, but I was like, all right, there's an Applebee's nearby, gonna have a couple drinks, gonna sit, sober up, headed to a friend's house, had a little smoke, chilled, then came home, and that was the rest of my day. Because yeah, wasn't in entirely the best of moods.
Very understandable though.
But as we are here in what is getting us in a better mood, the return of the NWSL. And naturally, it wouldn't be the NWSL without throwing a last-minute curveball. Now, when we last discussed the plan, yes, the plan was for all 9 teams to participate. And they were going to be split into 3 triangular groups with the double round robin, and then 8 teams, yes, 8, would go on to the quarterfinals. Well, you still have the 9 teams, you still have the 4 games, but instead of it being 1 or 3 triangular groups, it's now one big quasi-mess. So, yes, there was the draw for broadcasted online done via computer, which why the NWSL doesn't decide to opt with the resources of picking names out of a glass bowl like FIFA and just about everybody else does is beyond me. But these are the times we live in. And the schedule was released for all 9 match days pretty close together. I'm seeing it now. It looks like you get the match day 1 is isolated, and then you kind of alternate between the 2 days off and then having to turn right around and play the next day. So this is going to be interesting as far as looking at the different teams.
Yeah, and I told you before we hopped on and did this live, the computer did the draw and the seeding and whatnot, and it still picked Orlando as the 9th place team. Of course, they came in 9th place last year, and they seeded them at 9th place this year. So poor Orlando is the team that has to play 4 times. The other teams only have to play 3 times. Orlando has to play 4 matches. So that's a lot of soccer for the Orlando Pride.
Well, the good news is for Orlando, it's all pretty spaced out. We get the first match against Chicago on the 27th. Then we play the Thorns on the 1st, then North Carolina the 5th, and then we finish with Sky Blue on the 9th. So it's a regular routine. But at the same time, that doesn't really bode well as far as advancing favorably in the tournament. But then again, it's Orlando, so I wouldn't expect much more.
Yeah, and you know what's crazy about their schedule? You just listed it out. I just made myself sound like a fool because everyone plays 4 games. It's just Orlando's are a lot tighter. Orlando has 3 out of the 4 playoff teams from last year on their schedule. And Sky Blue is not a team, we'll get into this soon. Sky Blue is not a team to be messed with because they brought in a ton of new players, a ton of great resources. Mitch Purse, McCall Zerboni. They brought back players who were overseas. They have a great goalkeeper in Kaylin Sheridan. I think they're getting 2 players back from ACL injuries. So Sky Blue's not one to mess with either after being kind of the quote unquote laughing stock in the NWSL for the last 2-3 years. That's not an easy schedule for Orlando. So I'm intrigued to see, what Orlando has up their sleeves to hold off these teams. And I mean, listen, North Carolina is North Carolina. I think they're going to thrash everybody in the tournament because they really didn't lose anybody this offseason. They only gained. And I think, Chicago, they're kind of going through this, how are we going to replace Sam Kerr type ordeal? But it's like, listen, Chicago still has Yuki Nagasato. They have Vanessa DiBernardo. They're getting back Michelle Vasconcelos. And of course, they have Julie Ertz. So I think Orlando, geez, oh man, that computer has something out for them because it was not a favorable draw for them whatsoever.
Well, I have said the technology has hated me and has been prone to hate me for quite some time. Now it just hates me from a distance. If my phone and my computer in any way talk to this computer who did this draw, then we're at the beginnings of Skynet, and I'm going to want to run to a private island or an Amish community. So that's going to potentially be a thing, because, this is how it starts. Oy, oy, oy. At least I know not to have a whole lot of faith early in this season, so I don't get my hopes up.
But at the end of the day, too, this seeding system that they have, I mean, does it really mean anything? I mean, yes, Orlando was in last place last year, and I think anybody knows that they're going to carry that over, no matter what that reputation. Just like North Carolina is carrying over the fact that they're the reigning champions, albeit 2-time winners. So it's like, does that seeding even matter? I know when Houston got picked as number 3, everyone was like, oh, okay, that's cool. I don't know. I mean, Washington's good and they're young and everything, but number 2, I think that's a bit pushing it. And then you have your defending champions at number 4. So it's like, what does this seeding even really mean aside from matches that are going to be played? Does that seeding even mean anything? I don't think it does. I think it just gives teams like Chicago and Houston and Washington a bit of an ego boost. And I had tweeted this, and my friend Neil Morris from The Equalizer and from a couple other outlets, he said to me, I'm mad that you beat me to it, but, Paul Riley's thing is that, North Carolina, even though they won it twice, they're the underdogs. They're always the underdogs. So when they got picked to 4th, I was like, oh, look at that. Underdog status for Paul Riley achieved.
Yeah, and for something like this, the fact that it's basically done by computer, number 1, and number 2, you would treat this like you would treat in college sports with your preseason top 25 poll. It's like it only matters really for that day and that first batch of games because everybody is on a pretty level playing field as this is the preseason. So to me, if they were sticking with the groups, I would say it would have mattered a lot more. But the fact that they're treating it like one gigantic table, no, it really doesn't mean much of anything at all. It just sees, okay, these are how they're going to line up against each other. So you can kind of feel out as you get into the knockout stages and eventually the season proper, who's going to have the best momentum. So it's almost like a nice little pre-season cup. So to me, it's no big deal.
Yeah, Sorry, that was really delayed. Yeah, I totally agree with you. I think that the computer, I don't know. I'm a little skeptical about said computer because said computer also made it so that the Thorns and the Courage are playing against each other in their first match, and it's like, oh my god, that's peak rivalry. And then you have the Rain, or I should say OL Reign, and the Thorns playing against each other. It's like, that's a Cascadia rivalry. So it's like, was it really a computer, or was there a little bit of hands-on shifting around too?
Well, I'm pretty sure there had to be, because if you're looking at a time for trying to create content, especially with other leagues and stuff coming back, you kind of want to showcase some of the best parts of your product that you can. So if you're able to inject any kind of rivalries into this, the best. Now, granted, does this make North Carolina's schedule a little bit easier? The fact that they get the Thorns out of the way first? Yes. Does it complicate things a bit for OL Reign? Yes. But that adds to the intrigue, especially to see who would go into the knockout stages and how those matches would be determined. That's the only thing I would really be curious as far as with the seeding. It's like, okay, does that have any impact as far as any sort of deep tiebreakers for who plays whom when come the knockout?
Yeah, I definitely understand what you're saying. I think that, you know, the Courage getting the Thorns out of the way and vice versa, the Thorns getting the Courage out of the way first. I mean, that not only are we getting a peak rivalry on the first match day, but it's a benefit for both teams. And I think that North Carolina, you know, you mentioned it, I think they have a bit of an easier schedule. I'm telling you though that I think the hardest schedule belongs to the Orlando Pride. And I think if they, you know, if they are that 9th team and it just so happens that they don't make it to the knockout round, I don't think it's because, oh, they're carrying all that dead weight from last year. Mark Skinner still hasn't, you know, changed the culture in Orlando. I think it's just because they are playing 3 teams that were in the playoffs last year. That's not an easy task. It's a really tough mountain to climb. And so I don't think it, and I think, yeah, those are their first 3 matches. No, they play Sky Blue second. But still, 3 out of 4 of the playoff teams are on your schedule. That's not easy. And I mean, they're missing out on Alex Morgan because she's not going to be there because she's on maternity leave. So it's like, what is Orlando? I mean, Orlando has a ton of talent. They brought in Allie Riley. They brought in all sorts of talent. Mark Skinner was looking at some of his former players. He was looking overseas, and he grabbed some good talent. But still, it's like, Orlando has a really tough task ahead of them, and if they lose and if they are that 9th team, I don't think that should be their brand, I guess, if there should be a season in, like, the fall or anything. It's just because they have a really tough slew of games.
Right, and you were right at first. Looking at it, it's Red Stars first on, like, the first match of the tournament, then match day 3, they play the Thorns. Then to match day 5, North Carolina, and it wraps up match day 7 against Sky Blue. And honestly, if you're looking at everything, that match against Sky Blue could be the one opportunity to really get points, and that may decide whether they are that 9 seed and then just get whitewashed, or if they can get any kind of result, if they can sneak up into that lower half and make the knockouts as one of the lower seeds. But as you mentioned, that's going to be telling. Intriguing to see how much Sky Blue can improve, but really telling for Orlando and saying, okay, how is this going to represent them in 2020?
You are 100% right, and I'm reading the schedule. This is a quick rant against the NWSL, whoever is doing their graphics. People read from left to right, not up and down. So make your graphic left to right. I was reading it the total wrong way, so thank you for clarifying that. Yeah, I think if Orlando loses, this isn't, I mean, if they play outright horrible though, if they give up like 4 or 5 goals against the Courage, it's like, okay, you played them last year. The Courage are pretty much returning their whole team from last year, except for maybe shifting a few pieces. Mm-hmm. You should know their like game plan by now. You should know how Sam Mewis and Lynn Williams are going to work together, how Jess McDonald and Dabinia are going to work together. So it's like, you shouldn't allow that many goals. And if you do, Orlando, thumbs down for you. That's not, and for anyone in the tournament, big thumbs down for you. You should know better. But at the same time, it's like, okay, if they lose like maybe 1-0 or something like that, it's just like, you know, you got them going up against the reigning champions and the Chicago Red Stars, who, albeit they got crushed in the final last year, are a tough team and have been in the playoffs every single year that the NWSL has been a thing. So it's just like, I mean, Orlando was not lucky in the draw, so to say.
No, they're not. But really, each of those first 3 matches are an opportunity to gain some sort of confidence. Yes, you have the Red Stars without Sam Kerr. Yes, you have North Carolina. You should know them and at least keep that close heading into the potential do or die against Sky Blue. And yes, you know the Thorns. So I guess you can expect a bit more parity than you would otherwise normally get in tournaments. So I'm curious as far as how those tiebreakers work, because it may come down to that at some point.
To determine the last team to make it, you mean?
Well, either determine the last team to make it, or if they would use tiebreakers to determine knockout matchups, because they
like
say
seeding.
8 of the 9 make it, but they don't say how they judge the 8 of the 9. So if you've got a logjam on teams that are like, say, 4 or 5 points, how are you going to break that apart?
Good point.
So, personally, I'm nervous but excited. And I am looking at some of these teams that have improved. I was able to take a quick glance at all the rosters. As you said, with all of the issues with Sky Blue, lack of talent, lack of performance, lack of facilities, lack of you name it, it seems like without entirely cleaning house, they're like, okay, we're going to build this team. We know we're starting from nothing, but with our pedigree and history we have, we can be competitive. This is the best way to show it.
Yeah, I think it's, you know, when I see the pieces that Sky Blue has picked and put together this year, you know, I know she's a national team player, but like my eye goes to Mallory Pugh. She really didn't have a huge spark when she was with the Washington Spirit. Maybe it wasn't the coaching that was right. Maybe it was, you know, the fact that the players around her and her did not connect well. But I think this is and Vlatko Andonovski, the head coach of the U.S. women's national team, has said this is going to be a big year for Mallory Pugh. He left her off. I don't think it was the November roster, but it was a roster early on in his tenure, and he left her off of the roster so she could work on her craft, work on her game, and get better, because he was like, she's just not cutting it right now. And that was one of Vlatko's first moves of, I'm not messing around. I want the talent. I don't want your name. So I think that this year for Mallory Pugh, this tournament, for Sky Blue, you know, they have all these new pieces, and they have the only, which is amazing to me, only female head coach in this league in Freya Coombe, but all eyes are going to be on Mallory Pugh to see how she fits into this new system. You know, they got a great player like McCall Zerboni, but not all eyes are going to be on her, I think, because she's a lot older than Mallory Pugh, and Mallory Pugh has a lot more room to grow. She has more longevity in her career of, you know, McCall's getting older. She could possibly retire in the next 2-3 years. So it's like, I think that Mallory Pugh has this kind of unspoken pressure on her from the national team and from the NWSL to be like, okay, you were this super hyped up product. You were playing your club soccer in Colorado. You went to UCLA for 1 year, and then you said, I'm going pro. And you kind of set the path for athletes to not participate in all 4 years of college and then go pro. And she just hasn't really lived up to the expectation at all. And I think she needs to this year. She needs to be better, and she needs to just have a rockin' tournament. I'm not saying she has to score every single goal for Sky Blue FC, because they have good goal scorers, and she's not going to do that. But she needs to be consistent most of all.
Absolutely. I guess maybe that all of the companies that I mentioned with her initial endorsement deals that she should have gotten, maybe they knew something that I didn't at the time. So that was on me. And for someone like her, you always have the knock on athletes across the board when they're in college and they decide to turn professional. It was the whole thing about they're not ready. And you kind of figured with her scoring prowess and everything else that Mallory Pugh was ready. Maybe now that she has cut her teeth with Washington, that she has had these experiences with the women's national team, maybe it's her. Maybe, like you said, the coaching and everything else around her, maybe she wasn't quite ready. But if you weren't quite ready then, okay, you have to be ready now. And for her, while her personal expectations are higher, the expectations for Sky Blue are much, much lower. So
Right.
if you can take this room to breathe, get into that system, and again, like you said, you don't have to score every goal. You don't have to put up amazing numbers. I mean, if you have like a full-on regular season, be a 1-2. Get like maybe close to double digits or hit double digits. That would be respectable, and that would show you have finally arrived. So if she can settle into that, I think that this would set her on the path not just for the rest of the season, but for the rest of her career. And with this tournament, maybe if she gets 2, and if they advance to the knockout stage, add a 3rd or a 4th, I think that would be fine.
I say this every year, I think, but I think this off season has been one of the more talked about in terms of player movement and trades and transfers and stuff like that. And I mean, a lot of players went to a lot of different teams. Mallory Pugh being, of course, one of many. So is she your person that you're most excited to see on a new team? I know who mine is, but I'm curious to hear who yours is.
I personally think so, because it's very rare for someone so young to have that label, not quite of a bust, but of living up to the hype. And to get such a unique opportunity to this, like this, to say, oh, can she really live up to all of that hype still? Or is this nothing is going to work? I want to see what she can do now that, since all of the eyes won't be on her like they were with Washington, but you have different sets of eyes to see how she can handle this situation. So yeah, she's the one I'm most curious about.
I'm gonna, we have a Google Docs where we, kind of put our ideas and stuff in before we do the show, and I had my player written, and then I thought about it all day, and I honest to God, like, I literally thought about this all day and all night. And I originally wrote Shirley Cruz, but I have to retract that. Shirley Cruz signed with OL Reign. But, I thought about it, and the big thing that came to me was she has nothing to prove. She is a legend in Costa Rica. She's not going to get kicked off the national team at all. And she is, she's one of the most renowned players in CONCACAF, if not, everyone in the world, whether, you might not know who Meli Herrera is or Gloriana Villalobos, but you do know who Shirley Cruz is, and she put Costa Rica on the map, and she was like the first player to go to Europe for Costa Rica and whatnot. But then, I thought about it, I was like, she has nothing to prove. But someone who has something to prove, my player is Kealia Ohai-Watt, who is now with the Chicago Red Stars. She's been in and out of the national team system, had that ACL injury a couple years ago. And I think that she could very well be called into the national team, whether it be as Carly Lloyd's replacement, whether it be as someone to fill in the shoes of, Jess McDonald or whatever. But I think that she's someone who, if she goes to Chicago, there's going to be a lot of pressure on her because everyone sees her as the person who's going to replace Sam Kerr. Now, will she put up Sam Kerr numbers? I have no idea. Sam Kerr had this kind of relationship with Yuki Nagasato where it was just like every goal they had was like the warmest biscuit out of the oven with the best butter on earth mixed together and just made pure happiness. But will that happen for Kealia Watt in Chicago? I have no idea. But I think that she is such a promising player. She's at the point where I think this year or next year is going to be her peak year. And I could see her slip right into that national team, going to the Olympics next year. I thought she was going to be a shoo-in this year because of Alex Morgan's pregnancy, but of course the Olympics have been postponed to next year. I think that this is going to be a huge tournament. This is going to be a preview of, is Kealia Ohai going to be super dominant in the NWSL? Is she going to be that new Sam Kerr? Is she going to connect with Julie Ertz, Yuki Nagasato, and all of these incredible players for the Chicago Red Stars? Is Rory Dames going to be the person that kind of, I don't know if fixes the problem is the right word, but finds that kind of, finds that light switch and flips it up for her? But this is going to be a big year, or it's going to be a tournament that's like, okay, it wasn't great. Here's what we need to work on moving forward. So I am retracting my pick of Shirley Cruz because she has nothing to prove, and she's playing with a coach that she knows extremely well, who coached her. I think it was at PSG and both Lyon and at Lyon as well. So she knows the coach. She has nothing to really fight. I mean, she always has something to fight for, but she doesn't have like a roster spot or something to fight for. But Kealia Ohai-Watt is that player for me that could really put herself on the map, not just in the NWSL, but with the national team as well.
And it's funny that you mention especially who she's trying to replace, because I would hope the Red Stars look at Kealia and say, okay, you don't have to be Sam Kerr. If you come close, or at least keep scoring, keep helping to generate at least the nearest potent offense, we will be okay. But if they have those high expectations for her, then that's just going to be an extra level of pressure that I don't know if anybody could really cope with, especially with how close the Red Stars got last year.
I think if you tell any player in the league going to Chicago, hey, you're going to be the next Sam Kerr, That's a lot of pressure because she was a back-to-back Golden Boot winner. I mean, I don't think you're not. That's why I said not maybe this year, but maybe next year could be her peak year. Because I think you give her a year, this tournament, you give her that time with the Red Stars to get implemented in the system and like work with Rory Dames and really understand him and his system. And I think she could just be a huge spark for Chicago. And, she's not going to score all the goals because they have a wealth of attackers. Those are the players you hear the most about with the Chicago Red Stars. You obviously hear about Nair because she's a U.S. women's national team goalkeeper. But those attackers and her together, that's going to be music to NWSL fans' ears watching those goals.
Yeah, because again, the goals really help make the game. And if you can just push, and weave magic through the defense, hey, you're going to keep fans entertained, which nobody's going to complain about that. But as always, there is a flip side. Someone who will not be keeping fans entertained in this tournament, as revealed by the French outlet Le Progrès Sport-Rhône, Megan Rapinoe. You are not going to see her on the pitch. Now, granted, if she's serious about making any kind of political run on Joe Biden's campaign, I would not object to that. That is just my personal opinion. But I'm sure with everything going on, I can entirely understand why she wouldn't want to participate in something like this, because you haven't had a lot of women's national team players really happy with the idea when it was first announced.
Yeah, and I know, I've been popping into a couple of these media conferences and whatnot, and what I've heard is that all the players for the Courage are on board. The Orlando Pride don't know 100% yet if all of their players... I mean, obviously, we mentioned that Alex Morgan isn't going to be there, but they don't know about some of the other national team players. But I think that, you cannot fault Megan Rapinoe for wanting to put her safety first. I think if there's, other reasons, you mentioned, with Joe Biden's campaign, I think it's okay, well... you have a duty to your club as well, too. But I think that, or I want to spend more time with, my fiance, Sue Bird. It's well, I understand that, but you're also getting paid to do this. I know that no matter what, players are getting paid their whole salary because the NWSL Players Association knocked it out of the park with their negotiations and whatnot. So kudos to them.
Baseball, you listening to this, baseball? You listening?
Kudos to them. They know what they're doing. All these other PAs need to take a note. But still, it's she's obviously one of the biggest faces of the league right now. She's one of the biggest personalities, if not the biggest personality in the league right now. So it's definitely a loss, but at the same time, it's if she's not going to be there, then you can't dwell on it too much because they have a talented team without her. And I mean, I had to laugh. My friend from Last Word on Soccer, Silvana, was they didn't have her in the video package on the CBS announcement. They must have known. And I was yeah, but she also played only 4 or 5 games in the entire NWSL last year, so they really didn't have much to show. So it's they've shown that they can win without her because they spent all that time without her last year. So I'm not worried about OL Reign in the slightest. I think I'm more worried about how the connection with the team and the new coach is going to be, especially with the language barrier. I've heard his English isn't fantastic, so I'm interested to see that. I'm not too worried about Megan Rapinoe sitting out of the tournament, honestly.
Okay, what is his primary language if English is secondary?
French.
Oh, well then that, please. Especially with something like that, you're up in the Pacific Northwest. You have some francophones right in Vancouver. So, yeah, that that's going to be an easier transition, especially compared to others. So that I'm not too worried about. But I guess my main concern, it won't be too much of a hit for OL Reign. It won't be too much of a hit for the league. But you would begin to get this overarching question of what will it be like when she does come back, start playing? How can she be reintroduced into this system? Because again, last season only a couple of games. Now this season they're getting at least 4, most likely 5, 6, even maybe 7 without her. Then they come back for a season proper, and then what? So that's going to lead to another struggle and maybe a couple of quirky questions going on.
Yeah, I think that brings up, too, for me, kind of a controversial statement, if you will. This is going to sound very simple because I'm putting on my basketball coach hat. I'm going into my 7th year of coaching grade school basketball, middle school basketball. But one of our things is if you don't come to practice, if you don't play in the games, if you're not, consistent and you're not training, you're not going to get the minutes. It doesn't matter if you're in 8th grade and it's your last year. If you're not, if you're not there, and if other players are playing better than you, they're going to be the ones playing. So, it happened last year. Megan Rapinoe hardly played at all. I think the first time she played in the NWSL at all last year was in like August. And so my thing is that you have Jasmine Spencer coming back from an ACL injury. You have Bethany Balcer, who rocked it last year as the rookie. You have Shirley Cruz, who's a new addition to the team. You have all of these players that are capable of, shining and being these incredible assets for the Reign. And it's like, if those players are hot and if those players really are putting up these big numbers, they're being consistent, you can't take away from them just because Megan Rapinoe's coming back. That's kind of where that entitlement, and, I talk about it more with the U.S. women's national team entitlement, sort of, but that's where it's like, oh, like, maybe, Megan Rapinoe, everyone knows the name, they know what she's done, but like, I don't think you can play somebody like that just based on popularity and because of their name. If Bethany Balcer's out here scoring 10 goals, you're not going to bench her at all for Megan Rapinoe because she's out there scoring 10 goals and being productive. And another thing, too, that I think a lot of people will overlook is, I'm going to use Balcer as an example again. If Balcer has this, amazing relationship on the pitch and she's understanding and Allie Long is assisting like all of her goals and stuff like that, you don't want to break up that connection. So
Not whatsoever.
Right. And I just think that, like, a lot of times, I am a huge critic of Carly Lloyd, albeit, like, I'm not just like, I don't like Carly Lloyd because I don't like Carly Lloyd. I don't like Carly Lloyd because, for multiple reasons. Number one, she has this attitude of I should be on the field all the time, and everybody else who's on the field over me is, not good enough. I'm better than them, blah, 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 blah. And it's like, you can't just flash your gold medals with the national team and say, I have this name, I have this popularity, and then expect to be played, because you need to go with the hot hand. You need to go with the players who are actually there, giving it their all, being consistent, and working really, really hard for that chance to be on the field. If OL Reign is really hitting a stride and they've got numbers and they got wins and they've got all kinds of off the chart statistics, I'm putting Megan Rapinoe on the bench to start these next matches. You know what I mean?
Yeah, because at best, if she's in a position to where she can go ahead and serve Reign as a super sub, you have these amazing partnerships, great link-up play, going into the attacking third. You're getting a lot of goals in the net. You're really putting pressure on the central defense. Why stop? You go ahead, then late in matches, say 70th, 75th minute, introduce Rapinoe. So not only do you still have those fresh legs and everything else that you can still cook. Now you have an extra dimension for any sort of late free kicks or things like that. Now, granted, that would just be my strategy to thinking of things and how I see it. But hey, if it can work, it can work. But anything beyond that, you risk kind of ruining a good thing.
Well, there is our combined controversial statement.
I mean, are we really known for the hot take? No. Could you perceive this as one? Yes. But think about it. Are we really wrong, though?
We won't admit it either if we are.
Under certain conditions, I may or may not, but that just depends. You have to catch me in a certain mood. So that covers everything on this side of the Atlantic. So now we go into a little bit of a situation brewing across the pond, hopping over to the latest adventures in the Bundesliga. Oh boy. All right. They're the league that has started. A league that is set to start back in a couple weeks' time, the Premier League. They have already come out and said their statement, hey, if there's any players who protest with the events post George Floyd and all these marches and peaceful protests going on worldwide, you won't hear anything from us. FIFA has said, we get it. You're not going to hear anything from us. You exercise common sense, everything's going to be golden. But that hasn't 100% been the case in the Deutschland. Yeah. One yellow card incident in particular that I really think should be rescinded, but the league said they won't. I'm kind of like, is it really for the rule, or are you really being that ticky-tack about it?
The Jadon Sancho one?
That's the one.
Yeah, oh man, it's a mess. I mean, if you're going to put out this statement and, FIFA, which is the governing body of, like, all soccer in the, the world, if they're saying, we're, do what you will, have common sense, but do what you will, then, I mean, you have to rescind that. If FIFA's saying that, you have to rescind that.
And especially when you're this close to the end of the season, and as is, you're already garnering good reputation for coming back and providing a good TV atmosphere, the cardboard cutout, all this and that. And you're already having players like Weston McKennie showing his support with the Justice for George armband and teammates joining in and those supporting him. You even had in that situation another player, let me pull it back up, Hakimi. He also had the shirt, same message after he scored a goal. Yet the league is saying, oh, well, Sancho got yellow carded because he lifted his shirt over his head and Hakimi didn't. And it's like, really? Out of all these things and all these times and all the stuff and you're having to finish, you're still going to try that? Sorry, but that doesn't sit with me.
Yeah, I'm with you 100%. Like, if your reason is that he pulled his shirt over his head, who is that harming? I don't understand it. Rules are weird and I don't like them. But I just gotta say, I gotta tip my hat to Weston McKennie in so many ways for telling the referee, no, I'm not taking this armband off, to him, going on social media, posting these videos of him saying, enough is enough. Like, I'm sick of this. He's 21 years old, I think. And he's
22?
21, 22. Yeah. I mean, he's using his platform, and I think he is so mature beyond his years and such a great athlete and a great person. And like, to just listen to him talk is like, I don't know. It's like listening to someone who's in their, 30s or 40s. He's just so well informed. And I just, I tip my hat to him because he is an excellent example. I think him and Zach Steffen probably had the strongest messages on the U.S. men's national team. DeAndre Yedlin also had a really great thread on Twitter about, his experience about being a black man and like his family and stuff. And just, those three players especially, I tip my hat to them because they are really, paving the way and showing how to use their platform, not, I don't know what the right word is, not enticing people who think a different way, but just truly speaking from the heart and just telling people how they feel. I think it's great.
Yeah, and for those who've known me, who listened to me, or dealt with me for a long time, know that as I've gotten older, now pretty much entrenching myself steadily into my mid-30s, I've become more cynical, especially about younger generations. So yes, expect me 40, 50 years time waving my version of my cane saying, get off my... I don't know if we're even going to have lawns in 50 years time, but you know what I mean. But at the same time, if I hear something and see something like these statements, and hearing these conferences, and hearing these players speak, the fact that they are so young, we're not talking about like the Cristiano Ronaldos of the world who tweets about his haircut or things like that. It's breaking with the culture of soccer that is universal and apolitical. It's like, yes, it's universal, but we, throughout the world of what's going on at home or abroad, can't always be apolitical. It's on us using our fame and our position to really say something. And to hear all of these guys in their early and mid 20s embrace this, knowing that they are going to be the ones who will have to step up and lead down the road, hearing this from them now gives me a lot of hope. It gives me a lot of comfort because there's still people who are educating, looking for the right things, seeing what's going on, and not even the power to necessarily out and out change minds or sow discord, but says, hey, these are our experiences. This is how we feel. You can take it as you wish, but we are going to let you know. I think it's just wonderful and brilliant.
I don't think there's a better way to say it. I mean, yeah, these guys are really taking an initiative and really stepping up in such a big way. And I don't really know how else to say it. I think they're just wonderful young men who are really using their platform in the best way that they can.
Absolutely. I applaud them. I applaud different leagues and FIFA for getting behind them. And this is going to help FIFA's image in a lot of eyes. I'm just going to say that. Gianni, I mean, you and I can still talk about stuff, but for now, you allowing your players throughout the world to have these kind of platforms and for them to step up and take it the way they have, kudos. I wish every sport could be like this.
It's not very often that Gianni Infantino gets a good job from Erik Watkins.
Yeah, make a note of this. This is a red letter day on the podcast. Oy, things are going on when I have to compliment multiple people. At least Don is still spared for the time being, but then next week is next week.
Oh, I'm sure we will have words about Don Garber.
Oh, yeah, from what I've heard brewing. He can save himself, but I'm not holding hopes. Now, Now for our last bit of business, and that reminds me, do you happen to remember how we did with our last set of pick'ems?
I have my list of what I picked. And it was not good. It was bad, because I have too much faith in Mönchengladbach. I had, what did we say? A draw was 1 point.
Oh, yeah, if you picked a draw and got it correct, that's 1 point. If you picked a win and got it correct, it's 3 points. If you picked a win and they drew, that was 1 point.
Got it. Let me pull this up.
Yeah, I should have thought to go ahead and keep this in our standings, but we can go ahead and look at this further and then have an update, especially for next week.
Oh, I didn't do too bad, actually.
Oh, I gotta look back and see how I did. Because I know with one of those, it was a late 2-2 that was like, wait, what the hell? They took this long to pull that back? Oh, I was just...
Yeah, I guess we can dive more deep into that for sure. But, yeah, I mean, this week's pick'ems are pretty good.
Yeah, we have a lineup of 5 this time, and I'm going to start with Mönchengladbach and Freiburg. This is the one that, of the 5 of them, actually intrigues me the most. Ooh. I mean, Gladbach is still at their moments. They're getting up there, but... it's one of those where I could actually see them. If they do win it, it's going to be late. But this one, to me, more likely says draw than anything.
Draw. Oh, I think it's tough. Gladbach's in 4th. Freiburg is in 8th. It's on the road for Gladbach. They're really not the best at keeping clean sheets, but I think that our friend Jan Sommer is overdue. I think it's 1-0, and it will be a Gladbach win who have their neck being breathed on by Bayer Leverkusen. Both of them have 56 points. They are vying for that 4th place spot.
But see, here's the... Now, and this is intriguing, especially when you see Leverkusen, who's playing Bayern Munich. Munich is a steamrolling team, which we've seen. They've opened up a huge gap. I think they'll continue to do so. But while they're neck and neck, I don't fully trust Gladbach to seize this potential opportunity. That's what worries me a little bit.
I'm excited for that Leverkusen match.
Yeah, that one, it's like, how well can they step up, especially after their last performance? But is Bayern too much of a buzzsaw? And with those late goals, especially now Alphonso Davies is putting his name out there.
I trust the fact that Bayern has Alphonso Davies, but they also, of course, have Robert Lewandowski. They have Thomas Muller, who has been ridiculous these last few matches. And for me, Bayer really, they lean mainly on Kai Havertz. So I think for me, Bayern just has too much muscle. So that's an easy win for me.
Yeah, so Mönchengladbach, while I would like to see them a win to keep that 4th place race interesting, I think they draw because Freiburg knows they're running out of time and they can make a late run to kind of push for Europe themselves. Bayern, it's like, we're back, we're playing, we want to put this away. Dortmund and everybody else are wounded, let's just go. End this now. so we can enjoy our holiday. Now, Fortuna against Hoffenheim. Fortuna got a little bit lucky. They really did. I have seen a lot of late stuff from them as well. If they can get off to a good early start, I see them winning.
I think them being home helps them. I think they're in a good place on the table. I don't think they're going to make a push for Europe like Freiburg could. I don't think they're going to... I'm looking at the wrong team because they're in 16th place. I was looking at Frankfurt's place. Anyway, they're not in a great place. They need a win. They're at home. But Hoffenheim's a pretty good team. They're in 7th place. I think it's a draw. And I think that Fortuna will lead most of the match, and it'll be a late goal from Hoffenheim that draws it.
Yeah, really? Because if anything, I could see that happening, but I don't know. I think that with how they've been able to come back, I think they're going to organize and park more defensively late. Especially if they do get that lead. If anything, I could easily see this being a 1-0 and really kind of dent Offenheim a bit. But Fortuna, I think they're starting to realize that they at least have the illusion of being able to save themselves, and they're going to start. Now, a big question mark. Dortmund against Hertha Berlin. They don't have the big man. He hurt. That's bad. The question is how bad? I think it's pretty bad.
And now there are evidently rumors of Lucien Favre leaving Dortmund. I have no idea where that is coming from at all. And there is a bit of an American connection here. They are saying that Jesse Marsch, who is with RB Salzburg, could potentially be a replacement option. I think that the Erling Haaland, that losing him is going to be tough. That I mean, comparing two worlds, that's like losing Sam Curtin in injury.
Exactly.
But I like some of the players on Dortmund's team that have been stepping up. Torgan Hazard, Mo Dahoud. I really have been liking what I've seen from the minutes Gio Reyna has gotten. This could be a chance for him to start. And Dortmund's at home too, so I know it's weird to say, you know, they're at home because there's really no atmosphere, but I still think there is a comfort level of being able to play on your home pitch where you practice and whatnot. So I'm going to take Dortmund with a very narrow 1-0 win.
I want to, but I think even though Dortmund are at home, you've lost Milan, you're trying to now reorganize this late in the season, you've now got all of this noise. I think it would be more likely 1-0 Berlin than a 1-0 Dortmund. I have to be honest, because a noise at this time of year hurts. And the fact that you don't have time to really get everybody together and organize and try to process this, teams like Hertha Berlin, it's going to be ripe for the picking. While they're down a little bit, make this that chance and then give the Bayern an easier ride to the title. So I've got to take Berlin with this one.
You know what? I love a good upset, so I would not be mad.
And finally, Werder Bremen, Wolfsburg.
Josh Sargent is seeing all of his American teammates. He saw McKennie this last week, and now he's meeting up with John Brooks.
Yeah, he's got a good reunions and stuff going on, which is great, but this is another one that smells like a draw to me, because I don't know what it is about Wolfsburg, but what I've seen since they've come back, I see way too many inconsistencies.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. You know, on our sister website, Last Word on Soccer, Dan Sperry on the Last Word Soccer Radio podcast, he says that for his bold pick for the Bundesliga is that Josh Sargent's going to score the saving from relegation goal. And I liked Werder Bremen this past week. I'm excited to see what they're going to do bouncing. I mean, Schalke has been really bad. I don't think they're a bad team. I just think that they've been playing really bad. So I think that either way, a win is going to be a win for Werder Bremen. I still think that Wolfsburg is a very tall task. But Erik, I smell an upset.
Really?
I smell an upset. I smell a 2-1 upset with a Josh Sargent goal.
I don't know. If anything, I could see it being a 2-1 game going into stoppage time. But somehow, I don't know if it's a failed pass, some sort of miscue, flukish foul, something happens and Bremen lies, and it ends up 2-2, and that's major points dropped from a winning position from Wolfsburg. Maybe it's me, maybe I'm reading different tea leaves, but I could see it playing out that way.
We have a couple interesting picks here.
It is definitely, when we go our next episode, we will sit back, review both these weeks of picks, see where we're at, because, it's going to be a very interesting race. And then, as the NWSL comes back, we'll be starting to pick some of those games too. So, we're probably going to end up being neck and neck at some point, if we're not already.
I'm excited for it.
So am I, because it'll be good to actually be able to keep track of these things, because I've tried stuff like this in the past, and didn't work out too well. But alas, we have come to that portion. That's the end of our show. We really hope that you were able to sit back and you don't have too many angry tweets at us. At Squid Sportshead, at Rachel Krieger. We're going to be around. I'm starting to get my live tweeting game back, if you've noticed.
I've noticed it. It has been very strong for a return. Good comeback.
Hey, I look and it's like riding a bike. You know what to do, what buttons to push, and as long as you're at the screen and your phone doesn't hate you, you can make some magic happen. But for now, you have listened to Soccer to the Max. Again, find us all over. We hope you enjoyed. We're going to be around our different places throughout this series of tunes at the internet, so definitely stay tuned.
Peace.
Peace!